everybody. My name is Michaela Auer-Grumbach, and I am a neurologist and neurogeneticist from Austria. I hope you can hear me. So I have been invited to replace Peter Young today because unfortunately he was unable to come. So I'm pleased to do this. And as yesterday afternoon, we start now to summarize the outcome of the 3 workshops. And for this, I would like to invite Andrea Gangfuss for the first presentation and for the first summary. Thank you. She will talk about the workshop establishing of a European CMT Research Association. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our working group was all about cooperation to establish the European CMT Research Association, or ECRA. And as first talk, we heard from Mrs. Teresa Sevilla-Mantecan about patient needs, and what is the most urgent need is a diagnosis. First of all, clinical diagnosis, and then also the genetic diagnosis. And she summed up that we still have a lack of understanding, first of all in the CMT2, but also in the other rare forms where we have over 50% of unknown genes. And what can we do as clinicians, as researchers, to work on this is to discover new genes, to give patients a diagnosis who don't have one so far. And that is possible by gathering families with similar phenotypes and then doing the deep phenotyping and the genetic analysis. And what is needed is synergies of researchers and clinicians, otherwise this isn't possible. And how can we do that? We have some national groups, we have the EARN, we also have the Inherited Neuropathy Consortium, and that are great opportunities, but what is distracting us is our daily work. We have to care for not only neuropathy patients, and I know that from my very own experiences, it's difficult to do both, and therefore we need more resources. We need money to be able to spend our time for research and to see patients in clinical studies, and we need more people to work with us. But I think everybody knows from its own experience the shortages of people working in the hospitals. And then as a second, we had Mrs. Lisa Reinecke, who told us a very good example of a working network. She talked about her experiences from the German network on CMT, the CMT Net. And it was founded in 2013, funded by the BMBF, and it has a very strong translational approach. So on the one hand, the researchers and the basic research, and also on the other hand, the clinicians. And this interdisciplinary work is very important for sharing data and also the services and samples. And she told us about the aims of the network, which I only want to point out some of them, which were to identify genetic modifiers or to find novel targets for future therapeutic approaches, and also to have a harmonized patient registry. She then told us about a few publications which derive from this network, for example, on the cost of illness of CMT, also very important, about pregnancy, and then what I'm really looking forward to is the natural history data, which will come soon, of about 200 patients, so really big data set. And then she also talked about targeting, she made another example of publication of targeting myelin lipid metabolism, and told us about the CMT lipid trial, which unfortunately got no funding. And also funding was a big topic in the whole discussion. Also, the CMT net didn't get a second funding for prolongation of its work. So that's something really important to take home. Like, it's one thing to establish something, but we also have to get money to keep it running. And then the third presenter in our working group was Mr. Tim van Gazewinkel, who told us how to boost the cooperation on CMT research in Europe. He quickly introduced the FIRS lab at the Hasselt University in Belgium, and then told us about his ideas, and he had a lot of ideas and also guidelines to be able to boost the CMT cooperation. And I only want to pick some, but one thing was collaboration, not only national but international. Something I think is really important to motivate, to educate, and to train young researchers and young clinicians, and also to be able to meet at conference like this one today. And he also talked about the funding initiatives and what is important. And from this really nice slide, he concluded that together we are stronger, as you all know, and that's why we have to create the ECRA. And what is necessary, therefore? We need governance, we need different boards, we need, on the one hand, the basic translational research, but also on the other hand, the clinical trial readiness. And then we had a very good discussion about these topics, and the one thing was that all this seems to be a bit overwhelming, that we can't do everything at once. We have to start. One or a group of some of us has to give a first draft, and then the next important thing is to get the funding from the EU. And it's not only about grant writing and explaining our work, but also the grant writing has to be done in a way that we really get the money. And perhaps that's something what is a full-time job, and we already have 1 or 2 or even 3 full-time jobs. And so perhaps that's something that has to be done by professionals to help us to get the money. And I want to end with something he said, that we need young people to stand up, and that's for me a take-home message. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. As yesterday, we go to the next speaker. This is Andrea Cortese, and he will summarize the outcome of the second workshop, Data Management for CMT, a very important issue, especially concerning CMT patient registries.
Can you put the slide on? I just did a slide for simplicity. Can you put this? Yes, great. The previous one? Back? One back. Fine, perfect. We were the group who actually dealt with patient registry, and particularly to work towards the generation of an integrated and unique European patient registry. There was Jean-Marc Antoine from France, Simon Thiel from representing the German-speaking world, and Teresina spoke about a European ERN-based initiative, and there was Alessandra and Marco moderated. So basically, we started off from the question, why do we need a patient registry? And there's really multiple answers and multiple tasks and multiple ways to design a registry, from just capture the epidemiology of the disease, going deeper into, if we speak about genetic diseases like CMT, genotype-phenotype correlation. We may want to monitor disease progression and use it to gather information about how the disease progresses and how to design trials. And because at the end, we and patients want to be ready for the coming trials. And clearly, in an ideal world, those registries are coupled with biobanks, so samples are also available, and that is partly happening, but not at a European or global level. I think, we are already in the treatment era, I would say, so those registries would and should also help us to monitor the level of care in different centers, finding discrepancies, so to improve the level of care, and to monitor the treatment response, because there's been also noted that there's now very expensive treatment available, but we're not really getting a feeling on the impact on the patient. So I do think this is a good point, and this would be another added value of a unique registry. There are multiple registries. There's many examples. There's too many examples. And we have some here, some successful example, well-designed. One from Jean-Christophe, so in France. They do have, as we do have in Italy, a registry which really for recording patients with rare disease, including neuromuscular. I think that's pretty limited in terms of clinical utility. That's why to capture detailed clinical data, they designed a French registry for peripheral neuropathies, including inflammatory and genetic, because clearly there's some overlap, and sometimes we might have doubts whether this is genetic or inflammatory. There's currently 5 centers heavily involved with experience in neuropathies. It's a web application, is a clinician-driven type of registry, and it really mirrors, I would say, as far as I can understand, the thorough clinical management of these patients, which is recorded on the registry. And ideally, this can take quite significant time, I think, to record both on the medical notes and on the registry. So ideally, they were thinking of coming up with something which will involve AI to import data from the clinical records to this sort of registry. Simone reminded us quite rightly that there's not only clinician-led and designed registry, but there's also patient-led registries, as well as their combination. The CMT Net registry, I think, is a successful example of a patient-initiated registry, where patients are actually quite heavily involved in, of course, consenting to be part of the registry, which increase enrollment accordingly to what I hear, and also makes patients involved also in their genetic condition, because they have to upload their genetic report. I understand that this is available in 50% of the cases. And then clinician will have to add up the clinical data, clinical scales, and I guess as for everything, it depends also on compliance of the different centers. This is available, I understand, so far to the German-speaking country, mainly Germany, plus Switzerland, Austria. Teresina explained to us the Euro NMD registry, an initiative which was commissioned by the European Union with not particularly generous, but good still to start funding from the European Union of 200,000. Quite ambitious task, because they want to capture and record all neuromuscular diseases with some common content, which works for all neuromuscular diseases, plus some disease-specific content. So here, really, ideally, this registry will provide data about epidemiology, genetic, natural history, response to treatment. So it seems pretty thorough and the way forward, as long as it's harmonized with what is already available and people are willing to spend the time to participate, because clearly if all centers are involved, there's currently really no funders willing to fund everyone for their job. So that's where the discussion came, the key points of the discussion which came up, and I think the discussion was particularly interesting. And the unanswered question and met needs when it comes to registries is that there's all the data protection issues, and this limits, in a way, the interoperability between registries, because some patients have consented to have their data stored somewhere. They cannot leave that particular site, and so interoperability, which is what we want, has to deal with GDPR, which is from patient perspective, but also from with the IP from patients and clinicians who have entered the data. So intellectual property, who will then use or manage, analyze the data. This is another outstanding issue which needs to be agreed upon. Funding. We know about it. And I brought up myself, because of personal experience, that sometimes we are drowned on multiple ethic approval of the same project which has to be reapproved in different centers, while I think the purpose of a European, at least registry, would be to approve it once, or at least at once, and then at state level, but then not at single cell level, or even, as I noticed, in different cities from the same. So it becomes really complicated, and you don't get the studies done at the end. Data entry can be time-consuming. Who enters the data? Who checks the validity of the data? I think it's really important to keep, if the registry is led by a clinician, that there has to be input from the patients, at least as far as the outcome, personal perception of the disease, and patient-reported outcome is concerned. And clearly, we're left today with multiple registry, and everyone is improving their registry and the initiative, but hopefully we're moving towards really one European or global registry after we solve all these issues. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very nicely summarized this section. I was also participated in this workshop. But now I would like to invite Signe Vaeth, okay, for summarizing the third workshop, mobilizing the patients, scientists, clinicians, and therapeutics, expectations and advice.
Okay. Hello. So this was a very interesting workshop to participate in. I think we could easily have used the whole day more. So I myself am a geneticist, so I do genetic analysis, but also talk to patients about the genetic analysis. And I think I have something to take with me home about the whole patient perspective here. So we, as in the other workshops, have overlapping themes. So we talked also a lot about registries and natural history studies, but I've sort of piled together the topics that were about patient motivation of the patients. So we need funding, we need natural history data, and the angle of this working group is how to motivate the patients to help on those issues. So one major theme was patient identity. And there was an interesting thought we discussed, is sort of turning the whole work group theme around. So having the patient at the top and having the patient groups motivate the scientists, because the patients are sort of the overlapping theme. Their goal is to get the treatment, get results, and all the different scientists and so forth have underlying goals. So I thought that was a really, really interesting way of thinking about it. Then there is the thought of what actually motivates the patients on also a personal or family level. There is the need to belong to a community, to know about the disease, to be informed, to know about events, know about the organizations, and know about clinical trials. Are they there? When are they there? When can I participate? Then we touched upon the name CMT and the fact that not very many people know about what CMT is, even though it's a very common neuropathy. So could we change the name, the wording, the way we speak about it, so to CMT and related polyneuropathies? So how to raise awareness people know muscular dystrophy, they don't know neuropathy. Okay. So that was sort of the patient identity themes. So then there's the patient involvement. So some patients and some families are strong, have a lot of support and a lot of means. So it's also important to identify those patients and groups that need support, that are not good at, it can be entire countries, it can be ethnic groups. We talked about that. Someone pointed out that 90% of global DNA data is of European origin. So we are missing out on a lot of important information. How to engage and involve patients? We need to focus on getting them the information, so feedback from research results to patient groups to ensure ongoing interest and support for participation. Of course, there's the big one, there's social media, using that in a good way. And then the same topic as everyone is talking about, the global mobilization and network building, the importance of this. Then my last overarching theme would be patient data and research. So how to get the patient involvement here. So one point was a patient app. An example was the CMT and Me application that I hadn't personally heard about before. So, and it, as far as I understand, there's a lot of points where you can self-report neurological exam, quality of life, that sort of data, and this can then be available for the clinician. So some sort of app. Then there was an important point about the thought that the patient data belongs to the patient. I think that's a very important point. And the need for an open talk about data sharing, making it uniform and compatible. And two final points, participation in natural history studies. So that also links up to the whole patient involvement theme. And then patient representation in governance structure of CMT research and the patient engagement in all stages of research. So that's what was all the things I have written down. But I think the one I would like to return to is the sort of bottom-up way of thinking about it, that the patient is in the center of all of this, and that's really, really important. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much. Is it okay that we proceed with the comments, an American perspective, or should we discuss before? Okay, then I would like to invite Katherine Forsey. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I can get The Americans gave me a huge laptop. It makes it a little bit difficult to see what I'm supposed to do and carry it around on my back. But thank you for my giant laptop. I do not wish to sound ungrateful. So thank you. I'm Katherine Forsey. I'm the Chief Research Officer at the Charcot-Marie-Tooth Association. I'm really honoured to have been invited by Daniel and Ingolf to come and provide an American perspective on the 3 workshops that you've just heard about. As you can tell from my cleverly disguised accent, I'm British. I live in England, so I'm joining Stefan Zuckner's great company of being a European speaking on behalf of America. I do too, Mary. So, for those of you who don't know us, thank you. We've been mentioned a lot of times through the last 2 days of presentations. So, the Charcot-Marie-Tooth Association is a US-based nonprofit, the largest global CMT dedicated patient advocacy group. We were founded in 1983. We're also the largest global philanthropic funder of CMT research. So we've invested over $23.5 million through STAR, which is our strategy to accelerate research, and that's just since 2008. So the CMTA is entirely funded through the CMT community and partner donations. And we have one goal, and that is to develop treatments for CMT. And we have a global team of staff, advisors and alliance partners, and by alliance partners that includes university institutions and biotech and pharma companies. We have a highly collaborative approach and we're committed to practice sharing and partnership working. So we have two main pillars, and they are research, where we currently have over 50 active funded research projects, and we have education and support, and both of those pillars are absolutely essential to our mission. So it's been really wonderful to be part of today's working groups, and I've been tasked with sharing how the American perspective from the CMTA, how we approach each of these areas, and how we address the challenges that you have raised. So firstly, cooperation. This map helps to illustrate the global reach of some of the CMTA's star partners. So whilst we are a US-based nonprofit, our work is entirely global. So we have clinical centres of excellence that are shown in orange. I think that screen there is a little bit better at showing the colours, but you can see those clinical centres of excellence are orange. The advisory board members are shown in green, and our alliance partners and funded projects in blue. And this does need updating because we've got a few more branches and people and projects in different countries that we need to add stars on for 2023. The STAR Advisory Board is 30 individuals, and they're split across the Scientific Advisory Board, the Therapeutic Expert Board, and the Clinical Expert Board. And that supports the through-life journey all the way through from basic research to treatment delivery in clinic. Many of those advisors are in the room today. Can I ask you to wave? Sorry, now you're having a drink. So stick your hand in the air if you're one of the CMTA's advisors. So we have 5, I didn't see you wave at me, Stefan, advisors in the room, showing that we have advisors from many different countries and spread right across Europe. So our strategy depends entirely on that collaborative partnership work. We can only accelerate research through working with the world's top CMT scientists, clinicians, and providing opportunities for those specialists to collaborate with each other. So how do we do it? Practically, what does it look like? So this doesn't just happen on its own. The CMTA works to facilitate and provide structured opportunities and is organised and intentional in how we facilitate cooperation, as well as then letting it be free to blossom organically over drinks by the river in France. So there's lots of opportunities for our people to come together. The research strategies that we work to are created through a collaborative co-creation approach, which brings STAR Advisory Board members together who have specialisms either in specific types of CMT or specific therapy modalities. We have STAR Advisory Board meetings, so our advisory board meets every month online, twice a year in person. It's going to be Friday the 16th as we all head to Copenhagen straight from Paris. The speakers who come to those meetings are either currently funded CMTA research groups who are giving progress updates, seeking key opinion leader insight and guidance for their next steps, or they might be new groups who are, or potential partners who are seeking funding or support in different ways for their research efforts in CMT. As well as that large advisory board meeting, we also have smaller groups. So we have a STAR team, which is a mixture of members of our board of directors and a STAR advisory board. And then we also pull group specialists together to advise on specific modalities. For example, for companies looking at an AAV delivery approach, we can bring in specialists to talk and advise them about how that would work in CMT. Conferences, we have our own patient and research summit, which will be in November this year, or we make a point to actively participate in others' conferences. So that's why I'm so pleased to be here. All of this money has been talked about quite a lot, but investment it's taken time. So the CMTA is celebrating 40 years this year, and significant amounts of money, all of which has come from the patients, to help drive these efforts over that time. And we do this through collaborative and multi-site projects. So many of the projects that we fund bring research groups together from different countries and different institutions, and also working closely with pharma and biotech companies so that we can support and facilitate as many people as possible getting into the CMT space. And then we also have a research toolbox. It's been talked about animal models and iPSCs. So we've created and made those available and characterized those for a broad range of CMT types, and we make them available for researchers to use. And it helps to also, we have a fully supported preclinical testing infrastructure for companies or individuals who might have a candidate therapy but not have the infrastructure to test it. And all of this is underpinned by communication. So that's a mixture of organic and formal approaches between our scientists, between our companies, together, patients, sharing results and progress, and making sure that our communities are taken with us every step of the way. So what does that mean? What has that created? What we've created is a really significant research program. So the sponsored research program element of our work has 32 projects at the moment. Many of the funded researchers are in the room. I'm going to ask you to wave, so stick your hand up if you have or currently have had some money from CMTA to fund your research. Thank you for waving. We also have as well the Alliance Partner and Preclinical Testing Program. In 2022, that was 18 study plans through 9 different commercial pharma biotech partners, and we expect that to be a greater number in 2023. So altogether, that results in 50 active research projects that are on my book, so I have lots of fun keeping up with everybody's progress. And then we also support our alliance partners beyond the preclinical stage. So that can be support with clinical trial design, working with the Inherited Neuropathy Consortium Clinical Trial Planning Group, and the members of our clinical expert board, also through the provision of patient focus groups that inform patient-led and patient-centric design. Straight after the PNS on the 22nd of June, we have a CMT2C focus group with Actio Bio around their natural history study and work in TRPV4. So that's just one practical example that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. One of the points that was raised in the workshop I sat through was about a clear vision for an end result. How do we get to that therapy in the body of a patient? And I wanted to reassure that that vision is there for CMT. There is knowledge and experience right the way through from start to finish, the whole through life development of those therapeutics. We are working through the process of baton passing. All of our organisations work together, seed funding at the beginning, hand-holding through the middle, and we rely on that baton being passed to different organisations with different expertise to get us to the end of where we need to be. Because of all of that baton passing and hard work, we are seeing a huge impact in the number of trials that are starting for CMT and ones that we expect to start in the next 12 months. And I think we can also look around and benefit from the success that there's been in other neuromuscular diseases. So many of our clinicians work beyond CMT. They have approved treatments for other neuromuscular diseases that are already been put into patients. That experience is there, and I think CMT can definitely follow in those footsteps and benefit from that experience. So the last part was on data management. So how the CMTA looks to work is to support our alliance partners, our advisors, and our centres of excellence, because they have the expertise and clinical access to collect robust, standardised data in the right way. Partnership for us is really key here. We don't seek to replicate, we seek to support and collaborate with our partners who have that expertise. So the CMTA has funded the Inherited Neuropathies Consortium since the beginning, I believe. Their clinical registry currently has over 7,000 patients who have been examined in Inherited Neuropathy Consortium clinics. And for these patients, we have clinician-reported data. So it's significantly more than a simple registry. This data collected on each of the patients includes clinical outcome assessments. It would vary depending on their age, but it includes their CMT type, when they were last seen. They'll cover CMT exam score. Most have at least a CMT baseline neuropathy score. And if they were seen within the last 2 to 3 years, they have a known genetic subtype. And many will also have CMT form, CMT high, CMT peds, or the pediatric quality of life measure, or the parent proxy version. Those who have the most common genetic subtypes will likely also have had samples drawn for biomarker study and also have genetic data. And the Inherited Neuropathy Consortium are in the early stages of collecting data through remote evaluation. Through that infrastructure, the CMTA also funds several active natural history and biomarker studies through the INC. Currently active studies include 1B, 1X, 2A, 2F, and ACT-CMT study, of course, is also running in 1A. INC sites are not just in the US, they're spread all over the world. So there's representatives here from sites in Italy, UK, Belgium, So they are global focused. We also, you're familiar, Stefan has mentioned the Genesis database before, which provides the online genomics data and management, which has helped the discovery of new types of CMT. So in terms of mobilising the patients, that's where the patient advocacy groups really come into their own. They play a key role, and this is the reason why the CMTA supports more than just research. So in order to mobilise the patients, we need community involvement. And community involvement in research, it grows from trust and active engagement. So the CMTA has 70 in-person branches across 4 different countries. I think of the US, just like Europe all combined. So by the time you add up what you have here in Europe, you'll probably have a similar quantity of work happening. We're just fortunate we're able to coordinate it within a single legislative zone, sort of. All the states working interesting ways. We also have CAP Footprint East and West, which brings in a summer camp for children with CMT, bringing in over 120 families this year. Compass Youth Council and Youth Movement scoops in everybody that's under 30. And then, of course, we have online social media discussion groups, a highly active presence, which can be entirely global. And Cleopa mentioned in one of the earlier sessions about CMT focus group that's based entirely on Facebook, and that happens for many of our disease types, and we support those. We also have a huge communication and education program to help bring the patients along with what is happening in CMT research and why it's important for patients. Why is it important that we're developing stem cells from dental pulp? Why is it important that we have new animal models for the disease? What is a clinical trial? What is an ASO? All of these things, breaking down the barriers, explaining the research to the patients. And that makes the research accessible. And then one of our major initiatives to help mobilise and engage the patients is Patients as Partners in Research. I snuck a poster up in the poster area to share a little bit more data on this. But Patients as Partners in Research is where we advance our strategy to accelerate research by engaging the patient community in the critical work of furthering developments of treatments. And we do this with several different objectives. So we support access to your surveys, natural history studies, clinical trial opportunities. We inform patients about research progress. We collect patient-reported data, and we use that anonymized data to inform the community, to inform our efforts, and to inform biotech partners around what's needed in CMT. And we also do it through collaboration. So we have a core question set within Patients as Partners as Research. It's available for adoption independently by any other patient advocacy group or organisation. We're highly aware, it's been highlighted several times at this conference, about data ownership, regulation challenges between different countries. So an approach of a core shared question set that's still owned by the individual groups. It maintains those protections whilst it also enables easier comparison and potential combination of analysed data. And ultimately, when the treatment is there, the companies want to know how many patients can you reach to tell them and encourage them to come in, and we need to all be able to combine together to get that word out. And this is just a little snapshot of the Patients as Partner data analysis so far. It's over 6,000 individuals. I think as of last week, it was 6,300 because it grows every day. They've created an individual research profile. So that 6,000 represents one of the largest CMT patient cohorts available. It's global. It's not just US. If you take a peek at the poster, I've put a map up of where all of these people are, and they're spread right across the world, with exceptions in South America and South Africa. As we've talked about, there are just gaps in where we have engagement with patients, and it's definitely something globally that we need to look at. But those patients have completed a 22-question questionnaire. We find out about CMT type, shown in my pie chart, subtype. There's 47 different subtypes represented within Patients as Partners, so that when somebody says we want to do a focus group for Forsey 2A, we can find them, we can tell them, we can bring them on board. So we need to know enough about the patients to engage them. The data gives us really key insights. It highlights the diagnostic gap. 40% are telling us they don't know their CMT type. But crucially, we've accelerated research to over 20 different studies just in the last 5 years. So that includes those focus groups, those natural history studies and clinical trials, which can't run without patients. Also, The poster that I've shared, that was the one that we presented at the UCL Neuromuscular Conference in March, just because it's important to publish. We're able to publish and share so that this data isn't of just benefit to us, but it's of benefit to everybody working in CMT. So that was a hugely quick whirlwind tour of an American perspective from a British lady. I'm really happy to take questions as part of the group. I'm going to sit myself down, so thank you.
So thank you very much for this very impressive and informative summary of the work of the CMTA. So we have enough time for a discussion. We can discuss the workshops now and the summaries of the workshops, and also, of course, future collaboration with the CMTA or a better collaboration, especially from the side of Europeans. So who has any questions? So please, let's start here.
Thank you. Just to pick up, it came up in our workshop as well, but with all of the discussion about registries, and it was to share some of the work we've been doing in the INC. We have a really nice diversity committee there where we've been trying to homogenise the data collection across the different countries in the INC for demographic data. And initially we brought together like the census categories from like Italy, US, UK and Australia, but we realised that actually, although we had improved reporting from people from non-European backgrounds, we still weren't getting the granularity, so we're continuing to refine that. And I think it would be, in this early stage of the discussion about the bringing together registries, you know, we heard from Andreas' feedback as well, it might be worth thinking about how to do that at this stage, so that there's that, because that data is obviously very helpful for particular genetic subtypes, but also from a health inequalities perspective and knowing who's engaging with the advisory groups and the registries as well. So it's just a suggestion, and you know, it's work we're doing in the INC, but it could be, you know, it'd be good to discuss that wider and how that would be relevant across the European countries.
Very important point. Yeah. Who wants to comment on this? Mary, yes, please.
One that struck me when we started looking at this was the definition of ethnic groups in the UK, for instance. In Italy and in the US was totally different. So US, it's like you're looking for the Spanish and Caucasian Americans. In the UK, you have multiple different ones. So one of the issues, if we're ever going to have a more global registry, is adapting some sort of more global definition. I don't know if one exists, because there seems to be different ones by every country for their censuses, etc. So I think that is actually important. So I would say in London, you know, I have about 2,200 people on my registry in Queen Square, and the ones we're worst at diagnosing are the people from Africa and the people from parts of Asia, because we just don't have the control data. So I think getting granularity in control data is very important, and that'll be only done if we've accurate definitions for the registries. But I'm not quite sure what the answer to that is. I'm not quite sure if Europe is all the same. UK certainly isn't the same as Italy and US. Don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the increase of the immigration, we also, of course, confronted with more patients from coming to Europe. So that's also something you have to think about.
Okay, and thank you very much. Any more questions? For sure. Okay, please.
Okay. So thank you so much, first of all, of these reports from the workshops. I would have liked to be in all the workshops in parallel. Unfortunately, my brain is not sufficient to do this, and it's impossible. But I've seen a lot of overlap in the three items which were discussed. So, for instance, the data management question, would that be a subject for an organization, for an association, researchers organization? I guess in some cases, yes, but would the association be able to deal with this? Or another kind of question, how to use then an organization for motivating and encouraging the patients to really participate in the process of research and not only be the subject of the research and subject of clinical treatment, whatever it might be. Could an organization of this kind accept, or in addition to the patients' organizations, trigger more involvement of the patients in this process? But the real question I would now like to ask to Katherine Forsey, but also to Alison Moore, and also to Susan Rüdiger. This is the question. You seem all to have kind of registers. Your registers of CMT America, huge one, 6,000, what you said, people registered. I know that HFN has a register which is pretty big and rich, and I'm sure that also CMT-RF, so Susan, they have a register. Now we have a register in Germany, we have registers in other member states, etc., etc. In one of the workshops, it was said we would like to have one register. Is there a readiness in the diverse, just the American perspective, in readiness of the American associations to open their registers and put them together, make them compatible so that there is interoperability, so if a researcher needs information, including Stefan Züchner's Genesis, okay? If I'm a researcher and I need a lot of data and information on patients and etc., I would like to take my little computer, push a button and say, all the patients with CMT2 or CMT1A or whatever, with this kind of specific items, please let me have their data. I would like that this happens one day. I'm sure it does not happen so easily. There are technical questions, there are questions of data protection, and there are, of course, questions of policy of each of the organizations, because they owe first to use their money for their own members who pay their contributions, the donations, etc. But the interest of the patients, let me say this, is not that you go each for yourself, but we need all the data all together in order to make reasonable progress in using artificial intelligence, etc. Is there readiness to come together to put these registers together? It's also a question, for instance, in my German experience, Lisa Reinecke for the German register, CMT-Net. Is that open? Would you open that and make it interoperable with Americans? I know GDPR is a big issue in this context, but we might, working with the EU Commission and the legislators, we might overcome this problem. So just ignore GDPR and say technically and politically, are you ready? Thank you.
Part of the response to Ingolf, as you know, there are standards developed at the world level in IRDIRC, the International Rare Disease Research Consortium, on what is called the FAIR principle, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data. So that's very, very important for every registry manager to know about this principle and their technical implication, to make sure that all existing and new registry actually adopt this FAIR principle, because that will be the technical piece to make sure that one day we can have a Google of rare disease or of CMT, whereby just requesting one search engine, we will have the answer of all the available data in all registries. So that's just for the technical part. Then I agree there are all the legal and policy part which needs to be solved. So on that, I'll let you discuss about it. But if we don't even have the technical part in place, it will never work. So FAIR principle, if you don't know about it, you'll find websites about the FAIR principle. Make sure that your registry respect and adopt this FAIR principle. That's the only way to have them connected and interoperable.
Just to address some of those points, Ingolf, I think that technology will help. The INC started the clinical registry a long time ago. Patients as Partners has existed since 2018. We were careful not to overlap. We don't take clinical information because we help fund and support the INC to do the clinical side. We take a different type of patient-reported data for a different reason. I like to think in the future AI may have a solution, like Helena and Wolfgang spoke about yesterday, is how do we combine these data sets through an AI tool to be able to pull together and merge whilst maintaining anonymity, but while still being able to reach out to those I mean, there's a lot of challenges, but I think that there will be AI tools that can manage that. Because once, for example, there's a treatment for 1A, we're going to want to go to every single patient with 1A and tell them. I think we trust all the groups will do that, but it would be nice to just push a button. But AI might have some of the solutions further down the line.
Do you work with CPATH, which is a big database for all rare diseases in the US? It's endorsed and funded by the FDA, and a lot of PAGs work with them in order to centralize the data and, you know, be used, well, they say free of charge, but okay, it depends who's accessing the data. Are you familiar with them? Do you work with them? CPATH is the you know, it's a new database that is funded. Are you familiar with it? Yes.
So we provide, we're in the process of providing cohort of data to them around optic atrophy related to some of the CMTs. We haven't given them all our data, but we're open to giving them some of the data that will be relevant to other rare diseases. We've also incorporated ClinGen surveys, which is part of NIH-developed validated PRO data sets, and that's also recognized. It's an FDA initiative, right. Both Critical Path Institute and some of the surveys we have in our patient registry. Ours is IRB approved, and I'm just looking up the details of, ours is GDPR and 21 CRF Part 11 compliant. Mm. So I think the beauty of what we've done is we're working with a third party called Matrix. So that's all they do. So we don't have to worry about all the regulations, and they have 7 languages now. So when you ask about collaboration and bringing registries together, I do think it's a really good idea. But when you look at what the CMTA is doing in HNF, again, we have 4,000 in our database. I think they have, whatever it is, 6,000. We started ours in 2013. So we have legacy data, which is an old natural history, and then we have the new one when we transported everything over to Matrix. The beauty of it is it's incorporated from a technology standpoint where anybody can partner with us. And there's ways that we can do it, and that's what we're working on now, where each group that wants to engage their database of patients into our platform, they would have the access to the identified data as long as it's written into the IRB. Because that's really the problem. I think a lot of people don't want to put, like other advocacy groups, for example, then they're giving their membership access to our database. So it makes it a little tricky. So we have to figure out ways where everybody feels, you know, that they're going to be able to access their patient data for whatever their projects are. So
Yeah, just to confirm that the Critical Path Institute, which was initially an NIH-funded initiative, now has a branch in Europe, I think in Netherlands, I'm not exactly sure, and they are partners of the European Joint Program, and they will be also members of the Rare Disease Partnership, so they are fully European compliant, and that's one of the rare structure which is able to create this. I had talked about bridges in my introduction, bridges between American and European data being fully compliant on both sides.
So they're able to tap in and look at all the rare diseases and see if there's similarities, and then comorbidity is obviously a big problem. So that's why we started with also the optic, because that affects a lot of these childhood rare diseases. There's also a lot of funding in optic right now, so we thought that was a good starting point. And we're really focused on a lot of the ultra rares that are neglected, so we've been able to leverage the registry to really look deeper into some of these very rare subtypes where these patients aren't even going to a clinic. So, but the Critical Path Institute, I didn't realize are they associated with EMA? Do you know? Are they working with the regulatory agency too also? So I think that's an advantage for us working with the Critical Path Institute, because it's government funded and recognized. So when industry goes for their INDs, it's just more robust data that I think helps with the clinical trial design and approvals.
I think just wanted to bring another area here. So I think, first of all, I think in principle, everyone would like to have a global registry and everything available, etc. And I hope we will work to that. There's huge problems with it, as we know, doing it. But I think eventually that may come. I think there's a couple of other kind of elephants in the room when it comes to the clinicians here and the scientists. And one of the big elephants in the room is we want clinicians and scientists to be interested in CMT. So we've got to enthuse our younger people to continue in the area. And we won't do that unless they have access to data to publish themselves. So one of the problems at the moment, if you're suddenly in an international database and you enter your patients and say it's a rare form of CMT, and then you go to a meeting and you see your data presented without acknowledgement, but also your person that might be working with you is doing their paper to get their next grant and their first name. Now that's only minor examples, but it happens the whole time. So somewhere or the other, at a very local level, because the system at the moment for people to get grants depends on publications. So we have to protect the people doing the research at a younger level to have some way of acknowledging it. It's not that it's trying to be keeping it, but that is one of the reasons, actually, there's a little bit of reticence sometimes, or you want really to know what is going out there. And I think we have to, as a group, do something about that. But I think across academia, that hasn't been addressed. Everyone wants to collaborate, but sometimes that's at the expense of people being able to get their careers off the ground. And in CMT, rare diseases, we've absolutely got to protect that. So I think somewhere or the other, keeping that in mind is very important. And it goes back to what was brought up a few times, the clinician that's working really hard, the person that's seen the patients, that is examining them, that is really busy, and they do all the work and put it into a registry, and at no level is that acknowledged, so that when they go to their manager saying, I want 15 minutes extra per patient, how is that recognized in any way? So we have to keep in mind those two things, because that's probably a bit of a barrier which we don't acknowledge publicly, because it sounds selfish, but it's not.
Thank you very much for this comment. I absolutely agree with you. I'm myself a clinician, and I know it's really hard work to collect all this stuff from the patients. So, any further comments? So maybe then let me comment on a remark on the first workshop. There was how can we improve awareness on CMT, and also there was a discussion about the name of CMT. What do you think about it? I was a little bit surprised to hear that this is maybe not the best choice for the name. So do you have any comment on that? Maybe?
So many things to change now. I mean, the name is
Yeah. So it is my experience as well from Austria, because I tried to tell the patients to be aware that they have CMT, and so I think meanwhile the awareness is not that good as we would wish it, but for other physicians to know it. But I think the term CMT has become quite popular meanwhile, and it's good if anyone knows. If not, it would be surprising if they don't know it. So we shouldn't change about that.
Yeah, we discussed it in our workshop, so I don't think we should change the name, but we need to work on more awareness among patients who have variants like sensory and autonomic or purely motor. Sometimes we heard that they don't feel that that's the association they belong to, or they're not aware that there is an association that they could belong to. So we need more awareness among patients that symptoms can be varied. And we also need more patients to come up and say their story and advocate and describe the course of the disease, because if you compete for funding with muscular dystrophy that is very progressive and more dramatic to present in the TV shows or wherever, then you need to really present the disability caused by CMT in a more, in a way that people will understand also the stakeholders. So that I think both on the patient side, but also on the public awareness, there is work to be done, but it's not by changing the name.
No, it's just the name that could be associated with CMT is genetic neuropathies. That is below, because we are talking about all CMT is genetic, and neuropathies is the major focus. This is the only way. CMT and related disorders, CMT that we have used many times, genetic neuropathies and so on. It's the only way to be more.
Well, when I started my career in CMT activities, I was always told, what? CMT, isn't it HMSN? And it was hard for me to understand and to even repeat HSMSN, whatever. So then I was told, no, it's two different diseases. I said, I heard it's the same thing, but patients were very convinced it's two different diseases. So I had to convince them, no, it's the same expression. So I think renaming would create a lot of confusion. Yeah. And I should ask you to remain with the CMT, which also honors Charcot, the nice home of him. Yeah. We have seen. I think we should stick with this. But regarding now awareness, our federation, and Daniel sits there, he was a big activist in this years and years. Every year we had the CMT awareness campaign, more or less effective. I think some people have been getting more aware that this exists. We have had interviews with patients, very nice interviews which are available on the website. So, and that's very telling, because I am really feeling happy and lucky that my case is not as difficult as the case of many others. So if I see the case of many others, it drives me to be even more active. So, but how to reach people with the picture of those who suffer CMT in the public, in the politics. So among even the profession, the clinicians, many neurologists, at least in Germany, have never heard about CMT. I was pretty surprised. 10 years of, how do you call it, the wondering, the diagnosis wondering. It's incredible. People are searched the feet or done with certain therapies from doctors who do not know that it is CMT. So would one case be all those who are neurologists here in the house would, in the next term, you have a neurologists congress or something like that? Just spend 15 or 20 minutes for a talk about CMT. So perhaps that would be a first step for raising awareness. And then all the doctors who have never heard about that could look at the websites and learn a little bit, because lifelong learning is a nice thing. So we try to have campaigns on awareness raising, but it is really difficult. True, this CMT, there are other diseases which are much more dramatic. But I feel myself, it's dramatic enough starting early in my youth with the other guys in this class, in the sport, etc. It is awful. Sometimes you get really very, very depressive. But of course, it's not as dramatic as dying. Okay. But if I'm dying, if I'm dead, I don't care anymore. So, but my parents would be unhappy. So, anyway, we have to work on that. But awareness is important. Now, let me come back to our idea of the creation of an association of researchers. Of course, this association should have members which are not only researchers, there should be patients in that. Now, in your view, you have named all these different associations which already exist, INC, whatever. Is it now an additional one? An additional one doing the same business should not be created? Or is it something different? Can we construct something different? At least for the Europeans, which is not a replication of ANC or other organizations. As far as I know, there is no specific CMT researchers organizations in Europe at the European level. There's none at the national levels, except a little bit CMT-Net in Germany. And if there are these kind of organizations, is there room for putting them together to have a federation of CMT organizations? Or what is your suggestion after having heard the discussion on the organization ECRA? Because before we start working on that, I would like to know if there is any chance that it is useful. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, I thought I should just mention, the Peripheral Nerve Society and the CMTR, because there is an international group which all of us in the room that are clinicians and scientists are involved with. So I think, we don't want to duplicate. We do want to work together. So I think, there's a long history of the very good European CMT meetings run by Vincent Timmerman and Peter de Jong, then the American, then the CMT with the PNS 2 or 3 days and 4 or 5 days, and nobody could do it so long, and then integrating into it. So I think if you look at the Peripheral Nerve Society, because it is all of neuropathy, I would say 60–70% of what's presented there next week is inherited neuropathies and CMT. Now, granted, the dedicated CMT is 1 day, probably, but if you look at the plenary lectures and everything else, so it's very heavily represented. But that is very much the clinical side and the science side. And I personally think, stepping back a bit, what is CMT? I think it is, may not be the same. I think it's, it's all of hereditary neuropathies from pure motor, motor predominant, motor and sensory, sensory predominant, pure sensory. But we obviously need our patients to understand that we include all of those. But what I think we've not been as good at what we should have been, and maybe we're better at years ago when we the smaller Antwerp meetings, is working with patients together. So I think it would be fantastic if the federation is amazing, the 17 groups have got together. If the US groups could affiliate the Asian groups, if there was a genuinely international patient, I could see that as well as having the PNS and CMTR, the CMT research group, that there may be something that maybe every couple of years there would be a meeting that was a bit like, a patient focus for 1 day and research focus for the other day, bringing in many of the CMT researchers that mightn't necessarily go to the PNS, some of the basic scientists, some of the geneticists. But I do think there's room for that collaboration between patients and the science researchers. And of course, industry works with both of us. We're very heavily working with industry in terms of, you know, the PNS and the CMTR. And of course, we don't want to suddenly find we're competing for funding for the same groups of people in two different meetings. So I think there is room for it. I definitely think there's room for a better collaboration. I think there's certain things that only the patient organisations can lead it. And thinking about, it is all about the patients. We're here to kind of help with it, but it is all about the patients. There's stuff we've talked about at the health level, at European level, at advocacy level, at changing some of the ways that can only be done. We will never be listened to by patients. And I think if you think back to the successful drugs, if I look at when the TTR gene therapies were licensed in the UK, and being what we call NICE, it's our organisation you have to pass through, it was the patient story that makes the difference. So I think that idea, you may think it's out there, and I think, most clinicians looking after patients with CMT, there is a morbidity associated with a long-term disease, which is a different kind of morbidity than a very acute disease, say like motor neuron disease, but it's not less, it's just different. So I think there is actually still a huge need for a voice, but I think there is room for a collaboration, but it needs to be clearly delineated and to maximise what we're doing eventually for patients.
I was really struck by what when Ingolf was describing there about how you feel when you're in those situations like the sports, etc. And one thing that's been great this weekend is having meeting therapists, meeting other physiotherapists. We've had orthotists, we've got a psychologist here as well, looking at that side of things, the sort of support, the physical and psychological management and interventions. And I think this might be a nice opportunity to be able to sort of network. Maybe we could be a subgroup, I don't know, but to be able to network that sort of work as well, because often what we're trying to do is create interventions and measures that to actually, the people who are best able to then tell their local therapists about it are the people living with the condition. But then this is where the advice groups can push out that knowledge, because I'm trying to educate therapists across the world, but it's not easy. It's not easy, and we've been talking about that as a small subgroup this weekend. So this is where the advocacy groups could really help with that and help us to help you.
Any more comments or questions? Yes, please.
Hi, yeah. Sorry, it's my second time speaking. I never mentioned earlier, Margaret never had nothing like, there was no signs of CMT or anything like that. She got diagnosed in America. But she did have a platelet transfusion. Her platelets went down to 5. And ever since she had that, that's when I noticed the walking. So, does anybody here think that woke it up, or like woke up like the CMT, because there wasn't any signs of CMT?
Not to my knowledge. So, anyone?
So she had a platelet transfusion. She had like bruises on her legs and stuff. Her platelets went down to 5. And then after that, maybe 3-4 months later, that's when I started noting the balance and stuff like that.
So if there are not any more questions, I would like to thank all of you for the lively discussion, and I think we can come to the closing remarks from Vincent. Thank you very much.
Okay. Ingolf, you may introduce if you want to.
Okay, now those who stand, do you want to continue standing or sit down for a little moment? We have even not another half an hour now. We will have Vincent Timmerman without S, a great researcher and expert in this field. And I'm so happy to introduce him and give you the floor now for some conclusions of this conference. We have agreed that he will not repeat everything what was said during the conference, because that would need at least half an hour more. But he is so good that he is able to put together the key points which we should take away from this conference. And if you have to add something which he forgot, something important, after his talk, you raise your hand and say, please do not forget the patients, for instance, or whatever.
Yeah.
Huh?
Okay.
So, Vincent, it's your floor.
Okay.
The floor is yours now.
Thank
you very much for doing this.
Thank you very much,
job.
Ingolf. So are you ready for 1.5 more days? No, I would like to thank Ingolf and Daniel for asking me to make a conclusion of this meeting. I think we already concluded quite a lot. And a few weeks ago, we had a Teams meeting together among us three. And they asked me, how do you see this meeting and how do you want to conclude it? And I said, maybe we should have rapporteurs. And I would like to first give a big applause to all the rapporteurs that actually summarized the meeting. And the reason is because, of course, I'm supposed to make a summary of this meeting. You cannot be at several places at the same time. Although I'm polyvalent, I can do quite a lot of things at the same time, but still, I think it's important. So what I did, of course, I prepared a lot, but I also received summaries by email. I still need some summaries from a few of you, but please, the rapporteurs, you can still send me an email with your summary of your workshop. So particularly the ones from this morning. So I would like to have. So I will show you, I know that the colors are not so perfect on the slides, but don't worry so much about the colors that you will see, because these are so the red colors are the additions that I added, but there were also then black, and at the end they asked me to change the color, but I said, no, I'm not going to change the color. So how does it go? No. Sorry, can I go back to the first? Yeah. So I tried I received some of the ideas from all of you, from the rapporteurs. So I tried to summarize, and in red are some ideas that I've added myself, or from abstracts that I read before, but I'm not going to read it, okay? So you may recognize some of your ideas as well about the different, so we have here, I don't know why this is, so I put there 125 genes question mark, so maybe there are other things around that look like CMT, and as we end up with the discussion, we should give CMT, should we keep the name of CMT? Yes, but then we should, I've put 3 question marks behind the number of the genes already. I knew that this was coming as an issue. No, this, sorry. On the therapeutic outcomes, I added a few stuff. On Together We Are Stronger, so that's from today. So I managed already to get an idea what will be important. So I think the rapporteur has done the work well, and I think I can match my conclusions as well. So it's all well mentioned. 5, and then the last one that we also heard this morning already. So I'm not going to repeat all this. But then the to-do and take-home messages. Maybe I should look there. So the first one I put on the top, and you are not surprised, so we need funding for registries, but also actually for basic science. And it's important to have a kind of top-down funding strategy. So we need funding also at the basis. So you heard already from clinicians, if you make registries, we need really to find ways to raise funding and obtain funding to support research nurses, etc., who actually are able to feed the data and also do the analysis of the data. Also, when we will have treatments, it will be important to have a long-term vision on therapeutic strategies, if a therapy works or not, and not only 1 or 2 years, but over very long term, like 10, 15 years maybe. So that comes me to the second bullet point, make long-term perspectives. And that goes together with, you have to be prepared for clinical trials. And I catch one word here at this meeting also, we have to be proactive. So try to see what we will need, not tomorrow, but already in 5, 10, 20 years from now. And a third one is to stimulate interdisciplinary cooperative research at European and global level. And the global level is very important. Actually, I was at a brainstorm meeting together with Alessandro Meja at the NMC, and also the global, and you also mentioned this morning, is getting very important. So we should not sit on an island of Europe. So we should also connect with our US colleagues and Australian colleagues. And yesterday evening, I had the pleasure to sit to a Korean colleague. I don't know if she's still here. Yeah, you can stand up. So I would like to give her an applause, because she mentioned me yesterday in the bus that only 3 weeks ago, that's correct, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I can make mistakes. So 3 weeks ago, she was informed that there was a meeting today, these 2 days here, and she booked her flight, and she came here. So, but there was no place in this hotel, so she went to the other hotel. That's the only problem you had, and you really enjoyed this meeting, you told me. Okay. So it's good to have also the Asian continent present here, okay? So we have to create synergies and innovative ideas. So yesterday I was excited by your talk and from your sister as well about genomic medicine and the AI approach. So there's something that is something we have to consider in the future, which will be not easy. And again, this will need funding and also people to be able to pay the people who will feed the data and analyze the data, okay? And I know if you are a scientist or a professor like me, I cannot put a PhD student on such data analysis. So we cannot make a PhD out of pure data analysis. And I agree with the comment of Mary, when we go to meetings, you need also to give the credits of the people who do the data analysis so that it can be incorporated in a kind of PhD project. But the problem, and particularly in our country, in Belgium, if you do fishing experiments, which is actually data management, fishing experiments, you fish some findings, you will not be selected for a PhD, even a postdoc. So that's something we really have to be aware. And maybe this European effort and also global effort can find ways to get funding to really have funding from a top-down strategies. So that's something we have to consider. Create synergies, at least that's what I mentioned. Then data sharing and analysis is, of course, again, the obstacles are really major in data sharing. We have also heard these 2 days here. Data protection, informed consent, country differences, ethical stuff, GDPR, FAIR. We also heard about FAIR today. So this is really, really, really important. That is mainly a slide I dedicated to clinicians, scientists. That's what I wanted to tell. Second is mainly also involving the European CMT Federation. So I would like to keep a central goal together against CMT. I think this is the major point we all agree upon. There is no discussion there. I think we all are fighting CMT in this room, also patients. But we need to mobilize patients, including also minority groups, that's clear. We need to cooperate more closely with specialists. So also the minority group should be seen by experts, you know. We should not make private medicine for elite. It should reach the whole population, okay? We need to increase awareness, and you already mentioned that, Ingolf, already. We also need to find ways to involve young patients, but also clinicians, scientists, and patient organizations. So we really need young blood and to really move forward and to look forward not 5 years, but 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ahead. We should avoid fragmentation of patient organizations by increasing partnership. That's my feeling. So we have several organizations, which is really great, even funding organizations. In the US, we have 2 or even 3, maybe. This is very nice. In Europe, we have more problematic to get funding. We all know this from this meeting, and we have experienced that ourselves. But I think we can, by increasing partnership, we can also go to the next point, which actually go with one voice to allow lobbying at the EU level, and particularly the European Joint Program. And also internationally, so not only limit to Europe, but also maybe contacts with NIH in the States, in Australia, in Asia. So maybe you can help us find this, some ways to get funding in Asia. There is a good group in Korea, I know, so might be opportunities there as well. Then I was wondering if we plan a second EMC, European CMT Specialist Conference, but I would like to consider also ENMC workshops. Okay, I'm a kind of ambassador here also for the ENMC. I'm a bit biased, but I like Alexander mentioned, that's why I also brought some folders here, the way of the ENMC organizes workshops. So also the European CMT Federation can also find money to support ENMC workshops dedicated to CMT. We can even create teamed workshops. So you can propose to the ENMC, okay, maybe we should have once in a while a workshop dedicated on CMT research or clinical, or even creating clinical trials. And you already noticed that we're already sitting here basically almost 2 days discussing the global stuff, but if you focus to one of these 125 genes where you want to have private medicine or a global approach, you need at least a whole weekend to figure out how we are going to set up the clinical trials. Do we have enough patients? Do we have a good registry for these patients? Where do we find them? Etc., etc., etc. So the ENMC workshop would be a very nice platform, also as a kind of prolongation, what we already have with the CTR meeting next week together with the PNS. But that's something that we can enforce by lobbying also the European CMT Federation towards the ENMC. Actually, some of your countries actually sponsoring the European Neuroscience Center to organize these workshops, okay? So that's something that could be considered. Then the last one, the last two is something tricky. The European project, so if you want to apply for another European project, as we did a long time ago, with success, and then the second time it failed, and I explain to some of you why it failed, pure for administrative complexity. The question is, who is prepared to write the first draft? And I know that after this meeting, many of us go back to their office, and as usual, and we had a very nice meeting, very productive, and that's it, point. When is the second EMC specialist conference in 2 years or 3 years? And then will be the same question, who is prepared to write the first draft? So nothing will happen. So therefore, we need indeed assistance, and you already proposed that you can hire some expert EU writers, because you need special language to submit European projects. And I remember the past, you spent easily 20,000 euros just to pay the submission of a project. So you need money to find somebody who can do all the administration. We can deal with the science and all the clinical aspects, but I mean, all the paperwork and getting people together is always very complicated. But there is somebody who should write the first draft, and I would suggest that we involve young people also in this strategy, because they will have to follow this for the next years as well. And then the continuation, we also hear, how can we continue European funding? How can we continue international funding? And not having a problem like Solv4D now or CMT-Net in Germany, like, okay, you get money for 3 years and that's it. You have done everything you want, but CMT is a whole life disease. So you need treatment a whole life, you need to follow up a whole life. So you need continuation. The last point I would like to make, so again, I would like to thank the rapporteurs, but also the chairman and the speakers. So it's an open question, but you can do lobbying by having an opinion paper of this meeting. So I suggest to not me, it doesn't have to be me, it can be anybody else here in the room, even a young person who really wants to take the pen and say, okay, and you can get all my notes. You know, I have 8 pages of notes. You have 6 emails with full of data. You have all these slides, so you see red and green. And we can chat together with Ingolf and Danielle as well. We can have a Teams meeting. We make an opinion paper, and it's up to you to decide. If you want an opinion paper that you can use to go to, I forgot the name of this minister from the European Commission, the lady who was nicely on the video. Yeah, and you can give that to her, but we can also publish it in a journal. And I'm thinking about like the Journal of Peripheral Nervous System, could be enormous disorders. There are many journals who make proceedings of orphan. Yeah, there are many journals. So if you want to have an impact, it's also important. Ah, okay. So yeah, it's just it's an open question. It's not something that we have to do, but it's something that I suggest. It was not raised at the meeting, so that's why I put it at the last point. And I think I forgot a lot of things to say. One aspect I would like to go back to one slide. This morning I heard a very nice suggestion, and I don't remember actually who told it, but so you have these 3 major icons here that I took from the CMT website, from your website. I would suggest now to put something patients above. So you wanted to have this pyramid. So the structure, the patients above, and then, so who told this? Somebody this morning. Yes, you, please take the microphone and tell the suggestion. Yeah? I'm not going to repeat what because you could tell it so well. So. You're from Denmark, eh?
Yeah, from Denmark. It was, I think, Nicolas. It was Nicolas Tricot who brought this up at our. Is he here? Yeah. One of the presenters brought this point up at our working group. So turning this whole group theme around. So the patients is the motivate the scientists and not the scientists motivating the patients.
Exactly.
Because the patients have the overall goal, all the scientists have sort of sub-goals, getting research papers, so forth, and the industry have goals in earning money and so forth, but the patients have sort of the golden goal.
So you need a kind of figure, so somebody of you, young people who is good in design or so, they can make a logo where you put the patients above, and then I think you can also use it as a lobby to show the importance of it to funding organizations. Other comments? Because I'm not only one who has to make a conclusion. Conclusion, of course. You or Danielle? Yeah.
I think the other stakeholder who's missing from this are the companies. because companies have money, or some companies have money.
Yeah, but these I took the logos from the website from the European CMT Federation, so it's not my invention what is there.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's just suggestion to improve the website or to add some stuff. You can discuss this later on with the chairman. Yeah. Davide, yeah. You have an announcement also to make. Okay.
No, it was a final comment on my side. These 2 days were extremely important and very useful. A lot of things came out. So, and your summary was very brilliant. We have several tasks to be maintained. Now the problem is how to maintain them. So there are tasks that are already designed, like another meeting, a meeting with the patient and scientists, an opinion paper. The important thing is that something is maintained, and you need to devise how to maintain a task force working on this in the next weeks and keep in contact and be concrete in the final production. I apologize, but I take the advantage of this because it may be interesting to most of you. Through the ERN, we are organizing rehabilitation summer school and peripheral neuropathies, rehabilitation and peripheral neuropathies that is open to registration for physicians and physiotherapists. It came from the patient organization, not only CMT but also these immune neuropathies, but the European CMT Federation is involved, and Filippo will be there to represent this association, and there is room for 50 registrations, and that is the email, and for information please ask me and Angelo, who is involved as well. You can write me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Davide. So thank you, Vincent, for this wonderful summary. I could never believe how this could be possible as you did. Congratulations. At least I'm happy we made the right choice for this job. And we made a good job also for all the other jobs. The choice was wonderful. I'm so impressed and I learned so much. And this is why I would like to thank all those who have actively contributed and talked and actively listened to the others, because both is important if you want to communicate. So, but just one word on the question of turning the thing around, not that the specialists trigger and encourage the patients to be active, but also the patients do. I thought that this conference is an attempt from the patients to ask the specialists and the therapists, the doctors, the scientists, to continue their work and promise we would do everything to help you as much as we can. Now, I was determined to, also in the name of Daniel, but Daniel is invited, of course, to say the final word, because Daniel is the president. And I would like just to summarize or to give you some impressions at the end on some demand also regarding continuity of the whole thing. Of course, we did not organize this conference as a 1 day or 2 days show and that's finished. Of course not. It's an initiative to get something in process. And the process is a close cooperation between the patients, who are indeed the interested people, and all the scientists and all the doctors and the physicians and the therapists. Now the question is how to maintain this continuity. And I would like to ask now if there are some volunteers. It's not for now to decide that for each, but I would, for each of the strategic workshops, one officer, I call them officer, could become commissions or but now it's officer. One person who would like, a young person would be wonderful, because I think also longer than 3 years, it could be 30 years. And some of us will not be here anymore in 30 years, being realistic, not only because of CMT. So it would be young people being officer for the organization, creation, collecting ideas and putting things together regarding the ECRA, whatever shape it will take, however it might look. And of course, I see Mary, and we will always follow Mary's advice and listen to her, though I'm not sure if you want to play the officer for the creation. Although you are young and you have the perspective of 30 years, certainly. Second, for the data management issue, because I don't understand anything of data. I was a little bit involved in the data protection regulation process, but that's not enough to be efficient in setting up some structure, whatever it might be, regarding the data, access to the data, etc. That's the second. And third thing, that should be, I think, somebody from the patient's side also, regarding mobilizing patients. After the experience, whatever we heard today, it would be really important, and so to have somebody who is pushing that, who is taking responsibility of setting up something, okay, on this issue. Now, this is my second part of the dreams, the new dreams, is the officer dream, okay? It's a takeaway, please take it away and bring it back and pose your candidature. We then will elect, of course, the person who is the officer, volunteer. Another point, there will be interviews now. After this session, we will have an interview first with the winners of our posters contest. Filippo is a kind colleague and friend, vice president, the first vice president of our organization. He was a little bit in the shadow and not taking this kind of role as Daniel and I did, but he is behind that and he is the brain in some way. And that's why he was the right person to organize the contest for the posters, which was a late idea. Therefore, sorry for all those who were involved, all the young researchers who put a poster here, that the poster session was scheduled only very short time, so short notice. This morning, 8 o'clock, incredible early. I could not even go there. So, but there were tough people who did that. And thank you very much for the jury, which is Mary, which is Cleopas, and which is Sharam. But Sharam left already, yeah, unfortunately. But they have made their choice, and I don't tell you more than that, because this is for Filippo now. Filippo.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the jury and all the guys and girls that had this early start this morning. We didn't plan it well. We will do it better next time. But we thought that there were excellent work, and it was worth spending at least a couple of minutes to discuss with you guys and girls who presented your excellent work. So the jury stressed on the fact that it was a very tough task to decide and find out which was the best one. And actually the decision proved that it wasn't hard, because it was supposed to be a single prize, but it's actually a shared prize because the jury wasn't able to decide which one of the two of the best was the best. So it's my pleasure to give the ECMTF poster award to, sorry for the pronunciation if it's wrong, Jihan Gadacha, for her work about KCTD1 and Eugene in CMT disease. Please come here.
Please stand up.
And also
congratulations.
And also Natalie, Bernard, Marisa. Natalie, for her work on CMT4H.
Natalie, great.
I would like to thank the European CMT Federation for giving me the opportunity to present part of my work and to meet patients, because I'm a PhD student and I work on CMT, but I never meet a patient in real life. So it was a big source of inspiration, motivation, and it was a very great pleasure to be here. So thank you.
So yeah, it was a very good opportunity, and of course, as Jan said, I would like really to thank the organizer to give us the opportunity to present this work. And also, as a young scientist, for me it was really important because we are used to go to scientific congress meeting, and we are not so used to go really to meeting that focus on the patient and association. And also it was a really, I think, good way to also meet other scientists in a, closer event. We were really able to exchange, discuss, and I hope that we will, it will help in find a way to, to bring some treatment easier to patients and so on. So I guess we got a lot of discussion, and I hope it will just continue in this same way. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, congratulations, and thank you for taking up this challenge. Coming here, presenting a poster, and you didn't know what would happen, okay? That you would go home with an award. Now, unfortunately, it's now not only data sharing we are talking about, it's also award sharing. In the sense of two parts. One is that the two of you now will be interviewed, if you like. You're not condemned to be interviewed, but if you like that, it will give you, of course, a lot of publicity. You will be the top young researchers in CMT in Europe, okay? And even global, at the global level, in this sense. Let's remain modest a little bit. And regarding modesty, now, the award was set for 500 euro. Now, unfortunately, you share. You are modest. You get...
We like each other. It's okay. We are in the same lab. We can share.
You share. Each of you will have, if I'm right, 250. Is that okay? Yeah. So, congratulations and celebrate. Drink another champagne on that at one opportunity with your friends. Thank you very much for being here. Now, we come closer to the end. I would like to come back to Vincent Timmerman. Funding, yes. Rewarding the young people who are doing the work and on the spot, absolutely important. Maybe in other fields as well, but in CMT particularly. That's what we have to keep in mind, and I'm not sure how we translate it into practice. But there will be ways, and if anybody of you have an idea on that, please let me know, and we as a patients organization, we push that as a part of our policy program now, because we want to address, of course, the politicians at the national and at the European level. Global, of course, we have this now as a European event with some transatlantic, some Australian, some Korean participants, but it's not a global one. We thought it's good to start small. Europe is small. But of course, with the vision that one day we enlarge this and have a global sort of communication network, organization, whatever we can create, adding value, not replicating existing things. So that's the second thing. And it includes, of course, data. Now, my last point is your idea on the opinion paper, I think is really very, very good. Thank you very much for this idea. I would like to continue on that idea and say there are different specific papers which are for neurologists and for rare diseases, etc. Maybe there are 2, 3, or 4 journals. So why not organize that in each of these journals there is sort of a report or an opinion paper on this event and on the main takeaways of this event. I believe through the journals it's much more worth than awareness campaigns. And our awareness campaign, of course, will consist also in putting the interviews, putting the videos of your, if you agree, of your speeches, interventions, etc., on our website. And perhaps also on the future ICRA, if ever that would be created, website, so that there is some contents. And I believe as a point of reference that will help for all those who don't know what are patient organizations on CMT, they can then visit these websites and we can put the address and the link in our letters and communicate to everybody in all the social networks. So this, I think, the opinion papers or summaries or report from Paris, the Paris conference, first Paris conference on CMT. Let's call it perhaps like that, it's easier. That's a way ahead. Please consider, I address to the younger people here in this room, think of writing a little note on this event. That would be wonderful. So, and Vincent, I'm sure, and the others who are involved in the different journals and the selective committees for which are the papers which are published or not, they would help that these papers are really published. I hope so. Volunteers first. Thank you very much. Now I can come to thanks. There were already many thanks to the speakers, the discussants, the rapporteurs, to all those. But one was not so much mentioned yet. Daniel mentioned that at the beginning. Maybe you haven't noticed. But there is an organization which is called ComSanté. ComSanté, that's an agency who is there for health and other issues and helping people like us to put this kind of conference on the feet. And I've never seen a conference where the atmosphere at the dinner was so nice as yesterday. I've never seen a conference where the people participating were not only so wonderful and competent and intelligent, but also so nice and cooperative. Like what one of the dreams was, like a big family. Please keep your brothers and sisters now as part of the family of the CMT group, Paris conference, and after Paris conference. ComSanté is a key. Without ComSanté, and I might now call the names, Quentin, you have been in contact with Quentin, with Mylène. Mylène, yes, you have all seen Mylène and had the benefit of her assistance and help. And there is Vanessa, but I don't see Vanessa. Vanessa. She is the sort of the boss of the team. And Vanessa and your team, you're superb, superb. Thank you very much for this wonderful cooperation. And finally, since it's difficult for for a man to say this kind of official thanks to his wife, I would take this as my job now to say, as a vice president, to say thank you to Marina Borka, who is, I mean, she's so wonderful in doing in the shadow all this kind of work you should never notice. Because, you know, a conference or some event where you don't notice that it was work to organize that, the one you don't notice is the best one. Because it's smoothly going on, and what is done around it, you should not be aware of this. There's no awareness campaign on that, but the thanks and the acknowledgements for that, Marina, thank you very much. And last of least, I like these words, Mr. President. I'm so happy to have a good friend with whom I was so happy to work in preparing this, and I could never imagine how it could have happened without the president. Daniel, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ingolf. Sorry, it's very emotional.
Now I have a good way home. We don't have for you to eat now, but there might be a restaurant somewhere around. And for those who are invited for the interviews, please stay a little moment. We will go into the office room and have the interviews. I hope those who are called now know that I called. Or should I give the names? It's in this room. Okay. Yeah, in this room. Please stay, and the others kindly are invited. Anyway, bye-bye. Bye-bye.